Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax
FAIRtax
Guys, coming to you from Big Daddy Studios in Gainesville, Florida. Hopefully you're having a good day today.
Yeah, this is our pre-recorded show, but when it shows up on Facebook, the comments are live. So please, feel free to send the comments. We're going to do...
hang on, before you do that, let me remind everybody what our email address is. Give us a question or comment, because we spent all of last week's episode answering some of these things. And if we can get enough questions and comments in the future, we'll do it again. But the FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com. The FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. Of course, we have our Facebook page. You can leave us a question or a comment there as well. And we'll be gathering up some more of them, and of course taking comments off the video live as we do our live version. It'll do that next week, but that's how you can get a hold of the FAIRtax Guys and make yourself famous on FAIRtax Power Radio.
Yep. So okay, now
that's it. Yeah, last week we were dealing with some real questions. This week we're going to have some fun, somewhat fictionalized fun, but it's going to be fun anyway. Yeah.
We're going to do kind of a Dear Abby thing, except it's Dear FAIRtax Guys. We have ostensibly received some mail, some questions, some comments from various people around the country, some of them in positions of importance and so forth, and we're going to respond to these. So this will be our Dear FAIRtax Guys episode, all right? So enjoy.
Right. This is going. Oh, and I got an itch right under my ear. Hang on a second. Here we go. I don't know. Always happens.
All right.
All right, go ahead.
So, this one, Dear FAIRtax Guys, we passed the greatest tax reform in a generation, in which we lowered the tax rates for businesses and individuals. The economy is booming, but on your show, you keep saying it was not tax reform. Why can't you give us credit for doing such a great job?
Okay, well, dear Speaker Ryan, what you passed last year was tax relief, for which we are thankful for sure, but that was not tax reform, and we're going to keep saying it because it's still true. Yeah. Listen, we still have an income tax, we still have federal payroll taxes, we still have a corporate income tax, we still have to file tax returns on which we must share the intimate details of our personal finances with the government. Businesses still have to spend millions of dollars in man-hours just trying to comply with the tax code. The tax code is still over 70,000 pages long, and it's still chock full of exemptions, deductions, and loopholes bought and paid for by K Street lobbyists. We still have an IRS, and the IRS still is running roughshod over the Bill of Rights. And so, really, Mr. Speaker, think about it. Exactly what did you reform, okay? Now, our buddy Kerry Bowers put it best. He says, you reformed a system that consisted of an individual income tax, a payroll tax, and a corporate income tax enforced and administered by the IRS, and you reformed that into a system that has a personal income tax, a payroll tax, corporate income taxes enforced and administered by the Internal Revenue Service. Now, exactly where is the reform there?
Yeah,
okay?
big changes, huh?
Yeah, so, Mr. Speaker, when you pass the fair tax, then you can come back to the American people and talk about passing real tax reform and have a nice retirement.
Yeah, yes. Speaker Ryan won't be part of that because he decided to resign from Congress.
I think he's kind of had enough, but whatever.
Yeah,
that's it. They did pass tax reform. They have not passed tax reform. They passed tax relief.
And it's good relief, and it has had a positive effect on the economy.
And until the Congress critters go around undoing most of it,
but remember, lowering the taxes is not the only thing that boosted the economy. Mm-hmm. The economy started coming around before they did the tax relief, because the president started cutting back on unnecessary regulations, which allowed businesses to expand more easily. So reduced red tape, reduced taxes. You need both, and the FAIRtax does both.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We have another letter here?
Yeah. Oh, I think we do.
That was fun. Let's see what this one says.
Dear FAIRtax Guys, some of the Republicans in the House keep telling me about this fair tax, but my staffers tell me that it'll hurt the poor, favor the rich, and let companies get away with paying no taxes. What kind of a crazy tax plan is that?
Oh. Dear Mrs. Pelosi, Since you will be the Speaker of the House shortly and third in line for the presidency, you really should learn more about the fair tax, okay? Now, while it's true that the congressional sponsors of the fair tax are all Republicans, the fair tax is not a Republican bill. It's not. It was actually developed by independent economists in the private sector. They spent over $20 million making sure it will work. And it's not a Tea Party bill either. It predates the Tea Party by about a decade. Okay. Now, listen, we would invite you to sit down with Steve Hayes. He's the president of the Americans for Fair Taxation, and he will explain to you how the fair tax plan is a Democrat leader's dream. It's progressive, very progressive, not regressive like normal consumption taxes. You know, by eliminating federal withholding and eliminating the federal payroll taxes, the fair tax will let the working poor bring home the full gross amount of their paychecks. Plus, Ms. Pelosi, the fair tax contains a monthly prebate, which is actually a tax refund that covers the fair tax collected on spending up to the poverty level. No one pays a dime of federal tax out of their pocket until they've provided for their family's basic necessities. The poor will have a lot more money in their pockets with the fair tax than they do with the income tax. Now listen, in addition, Mrs. Pelosi, it is mathematically impossible for someone not to pay their fair share, because the more you spend above the poverty level, the more money you take out of your own pocket to pay the fair tax. Period. And listen, the rich cannot evade the fair tax either by hiding money offshore or by hiring a bunch of hotshot tax attorneys and lawyers to exploit loopholes in the tax code. So listen, also, this will be important to you as well. By changing the funding model for Social Security and Medicare the way the fair tax does, the fair tax ensures that wealthy people who buy things will start supporting these programs. And so the tax base expands from just people working for a paycheck to include everyone, including wealthy people who are buying things. And so if you would take a really close look at this thing without the partisan blinders on, you'll really like it.
Yep.
With love, the FAIRtax Guys.
Well, unfortunately, things have become so polarized in Washington that, you know, the last time Pelosi was the Speaker of the House, she let her caucus know that if they co-sponsored the fair tax, they could forget about getting funding. That's really too bad, because the fair tax really does help everybody, and it helps the people who most need the help, which ostensibly that's what the Democrats claim that they want to do. All right, but unfortunately, what it seems to be, and we've talked about this before, people in Congress like the current system because they glean power, and some of them get darn wealthy over it. So that's really too bad.
Yeah, but one of the things we mentioned here, the evasion problem is rampant with the income tax. And if there's anything that politicians love to do, it's spend money. Yeah. And if we can show them, we the people out here in the grassroots can show the political critters up there that the current income tax system is leaving billions, with a B, billions of dollars on the table that is owed but not collected. I mean, if I had an extra $1 billion to spend, I'd go skydiving a lot. Might even buy me a steam locomotive. Who knows? But
buy your own Learjet.
I would buy a Learjet too. We got to work that in. So,
and rent a pilot.
Yeah, I'll learn to fly it myself. But I'll fly the Learjet up to drive the steam locomotive. Now that'll be fun. Yeah. But really, there's a lot of evasion going on. We've talked about that here on Fair Tax Power Radio a good bit. And the fair tax all but gets rid of evasion. The evasion rate on the fair tax will be next to nothing.
There's another aspect of the evasion. It hurts the blue-collar workers. It really does, because how do you evade the tax when you're having the income tax and the payroll tax withdrawn from your paycheck before you even get it? You can't evade anything like that, all right? So the people that are evading it, they're getting away with it, but the people who get a paycheck, they're making up for it. Now, that hurts those people, the blue-collar workers, the most. So evasion really hurts those folks. The people getting a paycheck make up for the people who are evading it. It's another huge problem that pretty much goes away with the fair tax.
Absolutely. We have another letter.
Yeah.
This one's going to be fun, too.
Dear FAIRtax Guys, last year we passed a tax plan that will make America great again. But Mike Pence, Mike Huckabee, Marsha Blackburn, Stephen Moore, Tom Price, and many others on my team keep telling me that although my plan is great, it's not the greatest. What is the greatest tax plan?
Oh, this is going to be fun. Dear President Trump, your tax plan did some good things, but it really was not tax reform, as we explained to Speaker Ryan. It's still basically the same income-based tax plan that has been stifling the American economy since 1913. Now, Mr. President, you campaigned on a promise to bring jobs back to America. Now, as a businessman yourself, you know the best way to do that is to make the United States the most business-friendly place on the planet. Now, that means you not only cut the corporate tax rate, but you eliminate the incredibly burdensome compliance costs that businesses have to deal with. Now, Mr. President, you saw what happened when your plan cut the corporate tax rate from 39% back down to 21%. Now, just what do you think will happen if you cut that 21% to zero? Because that's what the fair tax does. The fair tax eliminates the corporate income tax altogether. It also all but eliminates compliance costs. Now, these costs are just passed on to the consumer anyway. So when you take those costs out of the price of American goods that are sold on the world market, you sit back and watch American businesses dominate the global marketplace. If the fair tax were the law of the land, major international corporations would be knocking down our doors, flocking to our shores, bringing millions of good-paying jobs with them. And as an added bonus, we'll just kind of put this on the side, the fair tax would also discourage illegal immigration because only legal American citizens would qualify for the prebate. So, Mr. President, the FAIRtax Guys' message to you, you have the chance to go down in history as the president who poured rocket fuel on the American economy. You have the chance to go down in history as the president who drove a stake through the heart of the Internal Revenue Service, and you have the chance to be the president who truly made America great again. Get on board with a fair tax and make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, when you were reading your response there, you can feel what's going to happen because I believe, I'm hoping, and I believe that at some point the president will come up, President Trump will come up and start talking about the fair tax because it is the next logical step to what they're doing. In fact, we've said before that what the president and the House and the Senate have done with the tax plan and with lowering regulations, they're making the case for the fair tax. They're helping us out. They're making the case for the fair tax. But when somebody in Congress starts talking about eliminating the corporate tax, you know what the response is going to be.
The big rich corporations need to pay their fair share.
Yeah. So we need to reiterate, the corporations do not pay taxes. It is an expense of doing business, and they pass it on to their consumers. People always pay taxes. It's always people, whether it's their customers, their employees, or their shareholders. People always pay the taxes. So don't get swallowed up with that nonsense, all right? The corporations need to pay their fair share. The corporations pass those expenses on to us every time, no exceptions.
Well, hopefully Mike Pence and Mike Huckabee and all those people are explaining to the president, who is a businessman himself, that the fair tax was designed by businessmen. Actually, it was designed by economists hired by businessmen. This is not a political issue. There has never been any issue in Congress, any bill in Congress that has been researched as thoroughly as the fair tax has. Show me another bill on any other subject in Congress throughout the entire recorded history of the country that has $20 million worth of research behind it.
Yep, that's right. That's absolutely right.
So there's no doubt in my mind the president has got to like this because it makes America the most business-friendly place on the planet. Corporate tax rate is zero. We see a lot of American corporations going overseas because the corporate tax rate is lower over there. Right. And, of course, we saw it happen when it went down from 39 to 21%. People paying bonuses, some other companies saying we're going to build plants in here, all that stuff. What happens when you turn that down to zero?
No, you're absolutely right. All that did happen. And even though the corporate tax did come down, there's still lots of companies that are offshore because it's, for instance, and I use this example, one of my sons works for a company that is headquarters in Ireland because their corporate tax rate is like 12-13%, and ours is still 21%. It's a big difference.
All right. So we got another letter. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Dear FAIRtax Guys, I graduated from high school last summer, and when I got a summer job before going to college, something went terribly wrong with my paycheck. What is FICA? What is withholding? What's going on here?
Dear Millennial, welcome to the real world. As you've already found out, our current tax system is rather cruel to young workers and older workers alike, by the way. Now, FICA, that is a federal payroll tax that is taken out of your paycheck to pay for Social Security. And if you look on your pay stub, you'll find there's another federal payroll tax taken out to support Medicare. Now, while we certainly hope that both you and those programs survive long enough for you to receive some benefits from them, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. It's very possible that the money being taken from you right now by those payroll taxes is just gone forever and you'll never see it again. Now, as for withholding, that is Uncle Sam telling you that he is your highest spending priority. That's the system telling you that you must pay the government before you can spend a dime of your hard-earned money on yourself or on your family. Now, Mr. Millennial, you really need to learn something about something called the fair tax. It replaces this entire corrupt system that the government gets their hands on your money before you do. The fair tax gets rid of that FICA deduction, it gets rid of the Medicare tax, and it gets rid of withholding. The fair tax lets you bring home the full gross amount of your paycheck. So with the fair tax, your money's not taxed when you earn it, it's taxed when you spend it. Now, the fair tax also puts Social Security and Medicare on firmer financial footing by expanding the tax base for those programs to everyone who buys things, not just those who are working for a paycheck. This will ensure that those programs will still be around when you need them. And another thing here, since the fair tax does not tax used stuff, it helps the environment, helps to provide a more sustainable future for everyone. So I suggest you go to www.fairtax.org to learn more about it. And when you're ready to help, go to bigsolution.org and sign up to help us get this done. The fair tax, once you understand it, you'll demand it.
Yep. Another way you can learn about it, go on to Amazon or Books A Million or, whatever, anywhere, and buy these books, all right? The first one.
Yeah, get the white one first. That's the first one.
Yep.
And then the red one comes back with some of the explanations of criticism that was leveled against the fair tax and kind of expands on what's in the white one.
They're good reads. I want to go back and re-emphasize about the help for the environment. The fair tax does not tax used goods, okay? So that's a big deal when it comes to cars and houses, which are generally a family's two biggest expenses, okay? When you buy a used car, you're saving a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to produce a car. And so when you buy a used one, there's no more energy in the production because it's already been made. You're buying a good used car, it maybe has 50,000 miles on it, it's good for you and so forth, and you're saving a lot of energy. And especially when it comes to aluminum. Now, there's a lot of aluminum in new cars. A lot of the engine blocks are made of aluminum. Bob and I worked on this at another episode before we were doing our video shows, when we were doing just our podcast. And I did some research, and I ran across one item that said they estimate that 1% of all the energy used in this country is used to make aluminum. Aluminum requires a tremendous amount of energy. So when you buy used stuff, you're saving energy, you're saving pollution, you're helping the environment, you're making our existence here more sustainable. So that's a good thing.
All right, next letter.
All right. Dear FAIRtax Guys, I run a small business that employs 25 people. Keeping up with the tax code is a real pain in the butt. I pay my accountant lots of money to make sure that we are following the law and taking advantage of every legal loophole that we can find. The money that I spend complying on the tax code is preventing me from expanding my business and creating more jobs. What can I do?
Dear Mr. Businessman, we feel your pain. The cost of complying with the current tax code is a huge burden for millions of companies, both larger and smaller than yours. And since you have to pass those costs along to your customers, the current system is hurting your business, which I'm sure you know already. Now listen, the best thing you can do is to understand it does not have to be this way.
Right.
The current system was created by politicians and lobbyists for the benefit of politicians and lobbyists, not for you. The fair tax was created by business people just like you who know firsthand that running a business is challenging enough without having to add in all the burdens of complying with a cumbersome tax code that's so big and so complicated that nobody can understand it. The fair tax was specifically designed to bring in the same amount of money for the government as the income tax, but to do it in a way that has the smallest negative impact on business possible. If you're in a retail business, you'll collect the fair tax from your customers and remit it to the State Department of Revenue just like you do with your state sales tax. Yep. Your computer system will pretty much take care of that for you, and you get to keep a small percentage of what you collect. Now, if you're not in a retail business, the fair tax doesn't touch you at all, since the fair tax is a retail-level consumption tax applied only to the retail purchase of new goods and services. In any case, you'll no longer need to compute and withhold federal income tax from your employees' paychecks and send it into the IRS because with a fair tax, there's no withholding and there's no IRS. Now, the way you can help, you can contact your congressmen and senators and demand that they not only co-sponsor the fair tax legislation, but that they actually become active supporters of the fair tax. Something else you can do is talk with other business people you know. Tell them that they don't have to live under a system designed to benefit politicians and lobbyists. Tell them to get on board with a system designed by and for businessmen like yourself. You can also contribute, if you would, to the Americans for Fair Taxation by going to bigsolution.org. Join the fight. We're glad to have you aboard.
Yeah, this is especially important for small business people. You know, the mega corporations, they have the funds to manipulate the current tax code. They can afford lobbyists, and they can afford to schmooze congressmen, you know, to make changes to the tax code that benefit them. Small businessman like this with 25 employees, they can't do that. And I would also make the case that his accountant doesn't have enough time to find all the legal loopholes. So there's probably opportunity costs there for this guy that he'll never realize. But it is costing him a lot. It's preventing him from expanding his. And I had a real life example of this. We were having some work done at our house, and the company was there. And this was a couple of years ago. He said, "I have enough work to expand my business and hire another crew." He said, "But because of the tax code and everything that's going on with this," he said, I don't dare go above 50 employees." So he was purposely not expanding his business because of the tax code. It was terrible.
Next letter.
So, yep. Okay, dear FAIRtax Guys, I have asked 2 people on my staff to keep up with keep me up to date on legislation. But they tell me that there are so many. Let me rephrase that because I've left out. To keep me up to date on tax legislation. But they tell me that there are so many changes that it's very hard to keep up with it. What is going on here?
Dear Congress critter, what's going on here is that you people in Congress can't resist monkeying with a tax code, especially when a lobbyist comes around to your office offering campaign cash in exchange for your help in getting favorable tax treatment for his client, or some special interest group wants you to help use the tax code to steer people's behavior or buying decisions in a particular direction. Now, we've been watching here on FAIRtax Power Radio, watching Congress.gov, and you and your colleagues have proposed well over 1,000, in fact, it's over 1,600 changes to the tax code in this Congress alone, and that's after passing the bill that you said was just going to be the end-all, be-all for tax reform.
That's right.
Now, we know that not all these changes are going to become law, but over the past 10 years, There's been an average of more than one change per day that has become law. The tax code is constantly changing. Now, the problem is that this monstrosity of a tax code that you and your colleagues have created for us, it is so big that nobody understands it. It's so complicated that you can ask 50 different professional tax preparers what the same family owes, and you'll get 50 different answers. So that begs the question, Mr. Congress Critter or Miss Congress Critter, just what is it about the current tax code and the IRS that you love so much? You have the power to make the tax code say anything you want it to, and look what you've given us. Now, let me remind you of something. You in Congress work for we the people, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of a system that favors the politically well-connected over the common man. I'm tired of a system where the government has set itself up as my highest spending priority by grabbing a big chunk of my paycheck before I even get it. I'm tired of having to fill out a tax return every year telling the government all the ins and outs of my personal finances. And I'm tired of living in fear that the IRS is going to seize my bank account just because they think I might have done something wrong, and I'm calling on you to fix it. I'm calling on you to pass the fair tax.
There you go. All right. I don't think I can add anything to that, except that we have to get after our Congress critters. We have to. And next month, we're going to talk a lot about that.
Absolutely, because we got a new Congress coming in, and we got time for one more letter.
Yep. Okay. Dear FAIRtax Guys, I'm a pastor of a church that runs about 200 people on Sunday morning. I have very strong convictions on how the Bible teaches us to live, and I do my best to try and steer my people in the right direction. I'm concerned about government and the IRS coming in and trying to censor me and threaten to take away our church's tax-exempt status if I preach something that they disagree with. All right? What can I do to preserve my right of free speech?
Dear Pastor, you raise an incredibly important point here, and it's something that often gets overlooked. The political class in Washington has increasingly used the IRS as a weapon against those with whom they disagree. Now, to use it as a weapon to infringe on anybody's right to free speech should be something that every American, regardless of ideology, should find abhorrent. It is all too easy, though, to support using the IRS as a weapon when you don't like or you don't agree with the person against whom the IRS is currently being used. But make no mistake about it. If the IRS remains an arrow in the government's quiver, the day will come when tables will turn and it will be used against you. Now, truthfully, the only way to abolish this kind of threat is to abolish the IRS. And the only way to abolish the IRS is to abolish the income tax that it's charged with enforcing and administering. And the only way to abolish the income tax is to pass the fair tax. Brother Pastor, there are all kinds of good economic reasons to pass the fair tax, but I think you may have hit on the best one of all. Tell your senators and congressional representatives to stand for free speech. Tell them to get rid of the IRS. Tell them to pass the fair tax.
Amen. So, is that it?
We'll now take up an offering.
Those are good. You know, I got to give Bob credit for these things. We've done this before when we were doing only our podcast, you know, I don't know, a year or so ago, and we had these Dear FAIRtax Guys, and they were kind of brief. You know, we just had kind of an outline, and then we expanded on it. So I kind of rewrote the thing for Paul Ryan and so forth, and sent it to Bob. Well, Bob was in a mood to update and enhance this, and I got to give him credit. When he sent back, he said, I started working on this, and I got into it. And the stuff that he wrote up here, it's great. I loved it. I said, yeah, we're going with that. So I'm very thankful for what he did. And,
it was fun.
In a lot of these, it comes down to the one crucial issue. Contact your elected officials and make your feelings about the fair tax known.
Go to PopVox and do the same thing.
Oh, yeah, PopVox. Yeah, we didn't mention that last week. POPVOX.com. And next month, when we have the new Congress, all the legislation starts over again. So going to PopVox next month is going to be very important, because if you got onto PopVox this year, you're going to have to do it all again, because it's all going to start all over again. Even H.R. 25, even though it's the same number bill, you still have to do it all over again. PopVox.com. All right, this is a great way to let your feelings known to your congressman and your 2 senators about fair tax or any other issue. So that's a good one. And
go to the logo store and get some gear.
Yep. Take these to your town hall meetings. All right. Pins, show your support for the fair tax. Where are these? Yep. There's travel mugs. There's hats, there's shirts, there's jackets, there's tote bags, there's little lunch buckets, all with the FAIRtax logos on them. FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. Show your support for the fair tax visibly. Let everybody know that you're a fair tax supporter. And if they come up and say, I've heard a little bit about this. What is this fair tax? Well, then you need to have some of these with you so you can give these to the people. All right? They got basic information, and people love this one too because it's got basic information on the front, and it's got the prebate schedule on the back. And of course, in January, we're going to have a new prebate schedule because we're going to have new figures from Health and Human Services. So,
well, dear FAIRtax Power Radio audience, we certainly appreciate you being out there and tuning in every week. We're going to be back live next week, and we're going to start a new feature next week that's going to be pretty cool. So you'll have to tune in and see what that's all about.
Yeah. What is that? Okay.
You know what we're doing. And we'll tell you all about it next week. But until then, I'm Bob Paxton. He's Ron Malero. We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Oh, these income tax forms are way too complicated. There's got to be a better way. Who are you?
We're the FAIRtax Guys.
We've got a big solution for you.
What's that?
It's the fair tax. Completely eliminates the federal income tax system as we know it. No more withholding, no more payroll taxes, no more tax returns ever, no more IRS. All gone. And I guarantee you, once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Yeah.
We got to get ready.